When it comes to the 30 seconds, do you want me to do it or do you do it?
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as I can see your clock.
Yes.
John normally has a little.
Right.
Yeah, we're on. Right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Rogers, and welcome to today's strategic planning, Thursday, 11th of September. To my right are Planning Officer Stephen Hunt, James Chatfield, Rachel Hodgson, and Highways Officer Scott Richardson. To my left is Jane Dale from Democratic Services and the Council's Solicitor David Crampton. Also in the chamber are members of the public and members of the committee. Arrangements for dealing with the planning applications, an officer summary and update will be given. Members are to note the information given by the officers. Any decision proposed which is contrary to recommendation contained within the report will require reasons if the proposal is to refuse, and reasons and conditions if the proposal is to approve the application. In accordance with the Council's equality policy, speakers are asked to refrain from making comments which could be construed as discriminatory or defamatory, otherwise it would be necessary to intervene. Additionally, I'd request that although differing views may be expressed, that we all respect those differing views. Please ensure your mobile phones are switched off onto silent to avoid any disruption of the meeting. And also, when you're not speaking, please put yourselves onto mute. Make sure your phones are, I think I've said that, on silent. There's no fire alarm due today, but if there is, our attendees will show us where to go. Right, item number 1 on today's agenda, declaration of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest, please. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item number 8. I'm familiar with the development, which is in our ward, and I've been present on several of its applications. I have made no public comment regarding this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Heslop-Mullins.
Similar one. This is item 8 is in my ward as well, and I've known it from its beginnings. I have had no contact with anyone to do with it and made no comments on it.
Thank you again. For me, number 8, we've been on site visits and it's been to numerous committees. Any other declarations from anybody? Nope, that's everybody. Thank you. So item number 2, to approve the minutes from the committee held on the 14th of August. Can I have a proposer for those? Thank you. A seconder? Yep. All in favour? That's everybody. And similarly, Eastern area of the 4th of August, please. Somebody from Eastern area. Yeah, proposed, seconded. All in favour of those minutes? That's everyone. And Western area of the 5th of August, please. Proposed, seconder. All in favour? Fantastic. Item number 4, any withdrawals?
There are no withdrawals, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. There is quite a lengthy update. First of all, just an overview to the scheme. The application seeks outline planning permission for 52,000 square metres of employment development on a parcel of land approximately 124.3 hectares in area. Whilst not allocated within the local plan, the application site is designated by the government as a Freeport tax site, located to the west of Goole, adjoining the key employment site of Capital Park. Access is a matter for consideration, with matters of scale, siting, appearance and landscaping reserved for later consideration through the reserved matters applications. In terms of update, there is an update required to the recommendation, and it's just for an addition to the resolution for deferral. So at the end of bullet point 2, for the expiry of the republication period, it's just to add on to allow for the Director of Planning to take into account any responses received and to be satisfied that they do not materially alter the planning balance or conclusions of the committee. The next update is with regards to third-party representations. Further comments have been received from and on behalf of Sterling Capital. The points raised are summarised as follows. A number of significant highway and planning concerns remain outstanding and have not been addressed. There is conflict with the local plan in that there is no evidence that the required policy exercise of carrying out comprehensive assessments, including a wide range of evidence and studies to support the development, has been carried out with no consideration of the whole of the Goole tax site. No end users are identified in conflict with Part E of Policy EC1, This lack of clarity as to end users raises further concerns as to proper assessment of the ability for the proposed development to be achieved and the lawfulness of the suggested approach to conditions that are intended to limit the number of vehicle trips. Serious concerns that the development would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety and that the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. This is in part due to the proposed access being unsuitable. Concerns are had with the lawfulness of the approach to analysis regarding policy, proper assessment of the ability for the development to be achieved, and the lawfulness of conditions that are intended to limit the number of vehicle trips. The council must satisfy itself in order to grant permission lawfully that the maximum quantum of development sought can be accommodated. This matter is not regulated to later consideration of reserved matters as it cannot lawfully be governed in that way. In order for any decision to grant planning permission, for the proposal to be lawful, there needs to be a proper understanding of the effect of that grant in terms of what it permits, the consequences of that grant on the highway network, and the effectiveness of conditions to control the development so as to avoid consequential harms. These matters have not been addressed, assessed, or understood. To grant planning permission for the proposed development lawfully, the council must be satisfied that the highway impact of 520,000 square metres of floor space is capable of being used for any of the uses applied or is acceptable. It appears that East Riding Council has no proper understanding whether this is the case, as the highway trips expected to be generated by the development are inherently very uncertain and the suggested means of controlling them by condition ineffective. Proposed highway-related conditions fail the 6 tests set out in the NPPF and importantly fail to provide a mechanism to avoid the harms they are intended to address, particularly when read together as an overall scheme. The conditions are both unlawful and ineffective, and to proceed on the basis of these conditions to grant permission would therefore be unlawful. Planning uses proposed do not accord with the Freeport aspirations. The proposed uses include gigafactories and energy and data centres, all of which generate a low level of job creation and conflict with the aspirations to drive economic growth, generate thousands of skilled jobs, support innovation and promote cross-sector collaboration, linking to the existing rail sector and the growing rail village, encompassing manufacturing, servicing and research and development facilities. Council's approach to uploading documents is a significant concern, with documents uploaded late and backdated. There's no response either from the council or the applicant in response to the previous concerns raised. And then finally, should the council approve the outline application in its current form and with the conditions that have been suggested, Sterling Capital put the council on notice that it intends to challenge the validity of the same in court and will issue a formal pre-action letter accordingly. So in response to the further representations received, many of the points are already addressed in the officer report, and as such it's not necessary to further expand on those, but officers would provide the following update. Sterling Capital's third-party representations refer to paragraph 6.13 of the local plan update strategy. This states that policy EC1 recognises the potential of Freeport tax sites to accommodate further development that supports the East Riding economy. As noted above, that part of the Hull East Freeport tax site within the East Riding currently benefits from planning permission, and individual parcels of land are allocated for employment use. They're Head A and Have A allocations. Our initial assessment shows that more evidence is required that the available at the time of preparing the local plan to ensure that Gull Freeport tax site can be comprehensively developed. Planning permissions or local development orders will only be granted where the impact of the development of the whole tax site is understood through comprehensive assessment, even where a proposal relates only to part of the Gull tax site. It's likely that land to the north and to the south will progress through separate planning applications. Applications will need to include a wide range of evidence and studies to support the development of the overall tax site and to identify the necessary mitigation. Position will progress on the Gull tax site will be monitored to determine whether an alternative approach to providing employment land is required. But it should be noted that the paragraph quoted is supporting text only and not policy. It does not impose additional policy requirements on the application. In any event, officers advise that the application does accord with the supporting text, in particular as explained in paragraph 6.17 of the committee report. There are 2 applications before the council covering the Freeport site. Both applications are accompanied by evidence which, when taken together, provides a comprehensive assessment in accordance with that paragraph. Officers satisfied that the impacts of the proposed development on the Freeport site as a whole, as well as the wider local area, are sufficiently understood for the purposes of determining this application. With regard to the actual policy of EC1, Part A6 supports the delivery of the Freeport initiative and its associated tax sites through comprehensive planning. As just mentioned, and as set out in paragraph 6.17 of the committee report, officers are satisfied that there has been a comprehensive planning both across the application site and the wider Freeport tax site compliant with policy EC1 A6. With regards to Sterling Capital's alleged conflict with policy EC1 Part E of the local plan update, and on this basis a failure to comply with the development plan read as a whole, these matters are already addressed in the report at paragraphs 6.4 to 6.29 and also paragraph 6.170 to 7.8. The advice in those paragraphs is maintained with the following further advice provided. There is compliance with all parts of policy EC1 except Part E due to the absence of a specified end user. Notwithstanding conflict with this part of policy EC1, given the compliance with all other parts so far as relevant, very limited weight is given to this conflict, having particular regard to the fact that significant employment benefits are likely to arise from the proposed development, the absence of alternative sites and the appropriateness of locating this development within the Freeport designation. Accordingly, officers consider that there is compliance with the policy as a whole. In any event, even having regard to conflict with Part A of Policy EC1, officers consider that the principle of the development is acceptable, particularly having regard to its co-location with a key employment site, the Freeport designation as also shown on the policies map, and the absence of alternative sites. Accordingly, even having regard to conflict with Part A of Policy EC1, officers conclude that overall there is compliance with the development plan when read as a whole, particularly given the limited weight afforded to the breach of Part A of Policy EC1. Following on from these comments, Sterling Capital suggests that the proposed uses do not accord with Freeport aspirations, particularly should a gigafactory, energy generating uses or data centres be developed on the site. It's acknowledged that the target sectors for the Freeport tax site are advanced manufacturing, clean energy and ports and logistics, with the core aim being to bring major investment into Goole and the wider Humber region. Whilst data centres do create fewer jobs than a manufacturing use, they are crucial to the modern economy, acting as the physical infrastructure for digital services, driving innovation in fields like AI and creating jobs, enabling economic growth by allowing businesses to operate more efficiently, fostering new digital products and attracting investment. Notwithstanding the jobs generated by each specific use, the employment uses proposed would all provide economic benefits as set out in the officer report, attracting investment into the region, creating job opportunities as envisaged by the Freeport tax site designation. With regards to the maximum parameters being assessed, officers are satisfied that the council's assessment has been based on an assessment of the maximum parameters. The conditions support this approach, in particular by requiring compliance with the parameters plan. With regards to the revised parameters plan that was received at the request of officers, as the new parameter plan sees a reduction in the maximum height of development, officers are content that other environmental information, particularly the ES which has been submitted, does not require amending or updating because the envelope has been drawn more narrowly now, with a worst case scenario assessed. The trip cap proposed relates to the proposed development only. When calculating the capacity of the highway network and the proposed junction, the proposed development has been considered in addition to both planned and consented development, including that of Sterling Capital's plot that would be accessed from the proposed access road. The trip cap to be conditioned would therefore not restrict the traffic generation associated with Sterling Capital's development. It's noted that condition 36 as written restricts new development from commencing, however not the occupation of new development. As such, revisions are proposed to ensure that should the trip cap exceed on the specified in the condition, then within 3 calendar months of this exceedance, details of supplementary information on mitigation are required to be provided and implemented where necessary. In addition, it's worth noting that an assessment of the operational traffic would have been undertaken at the reserved matter stage, in which a condition is imposed requiring compliance with the submitted and approved operational traffic management plans, with mechanisms for any changes to the occupier, shift patterns, etc. Officers reiterate that the maximum development of 520,000 square metres of employment development is capable of coming forward under the trip cap, as set out in paragraph 6.60 of the committee report. Notwithstanding the criticism of Sterling Capital with regards to the trip cap and likely trip rates, both the council's highways officer and the council's independent highway consultant are satisfied with these calculations as set out in paragraph 6.60 of the committee report. Criticism of the monitoring, such as frequency, etc., are addressed in condition 34, in which information to satisfy this pre-commencement condition is required to be submitted through a discharge of condition application in agreement with East Riding Council and National Highways. As set out in paragraph 6.71 of the committee report, officers are satisfied that the conditions imposed, including all highway-related conditions, are necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development being permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects, and as such satisfy the 6 tests as set out in paragraph 57 of the NPPF. Sterling Capital's representation raises concern with the proposed access being inadequate to serve the development and raise the fact that material supporting a previous application, which was for a dual carriageway, indicated that dualling was required to deliver further development. The advice in paragraph 6.62 and 6.63 of the committee report addresses this matter. The advice is maintained for the following reasons. The principle of consistency in decision making is important. Like cases should be decided alike unless there is good reason not to do so. However, in this case, the previous application is not a like case because circumstances have moved on, as explained in paragraph 6.63, and the latest assessment demonstrates that dualling is not required. In any event, even if this is the case, there are good reasons to depart from the earlier position because the latest assessments have demonstrated that the access proposed in this application can operate acceptably. The Council acknowledged that there are discrepancies between the dates that information, consultee comments, etc. have been received and the date that they've been made available on public access. Documents have, however, not been backdated. The date displayed is the date that the documents were received, not the date that they were published. That's the update in response to further representations. There's a few slight amendments needed to the report. For example, page 61, paragraph 6.73, the sentence relating to regulation 122 of the Community Infrastructure Levy regulations should just continue to say reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. In addition, the word significant impact should be replaced with unacceptable impact to demonstrate compliance with the NPPF. Page 82, paragraph 6.169 should say regulation 26 rather than section 26. Page 84, paragraph 6.18, there should be a full stop rather than a comma after the local plan before where there is conflict. The reason that that change is needed is because it's to clarify the overall compliance with the local plan. And that's the same for page 85, paragraph 7.7. Page 85, paragraph 7.7, there's just a typo and it should say compliant rather than complaint. And then last bit, section 8 of the report, the conditions bit, it just needs to be updated, authorising the Director of Planning to amend the conditions where the revisions do not materially alter the purpose of the condition. And then there's just a few minor tweaks to some of the conditions. So condition 4 at the end, it should just end at approved plans, removing but only in respect of those matters not reserved for later approval. There's an additional condition needed after condition 7, and that's to restrict sui generis uses to those that have been assessed. So the condition shall read, the sui generis development hereby permitted shall be used for energy generation and/or energy storage uses only, and not for any other purpose. And that condition is imposed in accordance with policies EC1, EC4 and ENV1 of the East Riding Local Plan, as the application has not been accompanied by sufficient information to allow an informed assessment of the impact of the development, should it be used for any other sui generis use. Following the addition of that condition, revisions will be needed to the condition numbers. The second line of condition 13 has been cut off, and that should read programme of archaeological work in accordance with the written scheme of investigation. Condition 23, the words all other should be added at the start of the third bullet point. Condition 35, at bullet point 2, the word method is just to be added after proposed so that it reads the proposed method and frequency of reporting. And then, as mentioned in the update earlier, with regards to condition 36, there are just some slight revisions needed so that it covers the consented development that has been constructed rather than just development still to be constructed. And you'll be pleased to know that that's it.
That's right, Sean. Right, members, So this one is down for deferral and then approval for all those updates and all the extra bits that we've just heard. But we've got two speakers on this application today. Our first speaker is Mr. D. Wells, the applicant. Mr. Wells, if you'd like to come up, take a seat. You've got 5 minutes and press play on your microphone when you want to begin, sir. Thank you.
Afternoon. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to address the committee in relation to this application. I'm David Wells, the Director of HBD, and I'm the project lead for the Google Freeport site. HBD is part of Henry Boot PLC, a Sheffield-based company established in 1886 and who specialise in industrial and logistics development. Over the past 10 years, we have delivered more than 5 million square feet of manufacturing and logistics space, creating many thousands of jobs and bringing significant inward investment to the areas in which we work. Our current pipeline totals around £1.5 billion worth of development value from its circa 6.5 million square feet of industrial and logistics space. Many of our schemes are in partnership with public bodies, and we work closely with the communities in which we work to encourage training, apprenticeships and job opportunities within our supply chain. We've been working closely with council officers, statutory authorities and stakeholders for over 3 years to develop the proposal set out in the application, identifying issues and working through these in conjunction with officers to arrive at the application before the committee today. This has been conducted in a thorough and proactive manner by officers, and the committee should take confidence in the recommendation for approval reached. I'd also like to thank the officers for their diligence and hard work in working with us to reach a satisfactory conclusion on this. A significant amount of work has gone into liaising with National Highways and the Council's highway team and their respective consultants to deal with the traffic generation from the proposal. In my experience, the process has been extremely thorough and extensively tested to arrive at a solution which will mitigate the additional traffic at Junction 36. The final financial solution has been agreed to enable the necessary works to be undertaken as set out in the committee report. No adverse impact has been found on Tom Pudding Way or the access road into the site. We will also be making contributions to local bus services and improving pedestrian and cycle access through the Section 106 agreement and working with occupiers on green travel plans as further mitigation. This application will build on the already extremely successful developments along Tom Pudding Way and provide the next logical phase of development. We will be looking to echo the quality of occupiers already in Goole, such as Siemens, Guardian Glass and Tesco, and the Freeport benefits will add to the attractiveness of the location. As set out in the committee report, if granted, this opportunity could create up to 4,500 new jobs, plus a further 768 full-time equivalents during the construction phases, and is projected to bring an additional £270 million of GVA into the area annually. In addition, the Freeport legislation means that 100% of business rates generated can be retained in the area, which could result in up to £275 million being available for economic development, specifically in the Goole and Hull East areas. All of these economic benefits would be lost if the application is not approved. I would say that we have already been approached by a number of major companies, 2 of which will be looking at buildings in excess of 10,000 square metres, attracted by both the excellent location and the Freeport status, even before we have commenced any marketing of the site. In conclusion, your officers have confirmed that this application aligns with policy and have recommended that consent should be granted. We hope that you will follow this recommendation, and we look forward to working with the council and the wider community to bring jobs and investment to the area.
Mr. Wells, thank you for your time. If you'd like to take your seat, our next speaker is Councillor Hanley. Councillor, you know how we operate, so you'll be given 30 seconds. When there's 30 seconds remaining, begin when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, committee. I sit before you today as a ward councillor for Goole and portfolio holder for inward investment for East Riding of Yorkshire Council, along with the Mayoral Combined Authority. Last year, Goole was singled out as the fastest growing inward investment area in the north of England. according to the Northern Powerhouse. And the report from them this year states that Goole is predicted to be the next boom town in the north. This application from HDB has the potential to be a transformative project for our local economy, fostering job creation, attracting investment and driving sustainable economic growth. The development is expected to accommodate up to 520,000 square metres of employment floor space, creating 900 jobs in the construction phase and up to just over 3,000 in the new jobs for the region. This development will enhance local supply chains, providing new opportunities for local businesses to engage in global trade and commerce and create a further 5,000 in the wider Yorkshire and Humber region. By establishing this Freeport tax site, we are likely to attract significant domestic and international investment, reinforcing Goole as a prime location for business operations and expansion. The Freeport will serve as a hub for innovation, encouraging the development of new technologies and skills within the workforce, therefore increasing our competitive edge. This HDB application aligns perfectly with our vision to make Goole the ideal place to work, grow and live, while also supporting the East Riding of Yorkshire Council's corporate priority for growing the economy. The proposed development will support a range of users set in a high-quality environment, including those in high-tech advanced manufacturing, low-carbon energy, modern distribution and logistics, and rail sectors, bringing sustainable, transformational change to Goole and the wider region. Goole will be recognised as a hub for innovation, global trade and investments. This development perfectly aligns with the Humber Freeport objectives to accelerate this region as a world-leading hub for renewable energy, clean growth, digital innovation and advanced manufacturing. So in conclusion, committee, this development should be supported due to the substantial benefits it will confer to our residents and businesses and a strategic alignment with both national and local economic development policies and objectives. So I would like the committee to really consider this and would be delighted if this was to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Members, it's over to us now. So first in line, Councillor Bibb.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really exciting proposal and it's an economic opportunity that the East Riding just cannot afford to pass up. It's imperative that we realise the potential offered by the Freeport and support our residents with the expected 4,500 job opportunities and the economic uplift, which has been estimated at £270 million. So I believe that substantial weight needs to be given to the economic benefits when considering this application, and therefore I would like to propose deferral pending approval as per officer recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Bibb. We'll go Councillor Healy and then Councillor Whittle.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I think, notwithstanding the fact that the application site is outside the development limits, it's a Freeport, and the economic benefits that come with that are so significant. It's about growth. It's about the future of our community. This Freeport is a nationally significant project. It unlocks investment, and it boosts trade. And we're lucky to have this in the East Riding. Its strategic position there on the edge of the region, reaching out across the M62, is really strategically important. It will unlock supply chains. It will boost the economy, and at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Everything's been set up with the Mayoral Combined Authority. Is about attracting inward investment to our region. So, notwithstanding the policy conflicts, in particular the best value, the issues around agricultural land and so on, I think the benefits of this are enormous, and I'm happy to second Councillor Bibb's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Whittle.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I agree with both the proposer and the seconder. I would, however, like a little bit of reassurance regarding the trip cap situation, because it's something which I'm not hugely familiar with. I understand that I think it's condition 35 will stipulate monitoring and enforcement of the trip cap. I'd just like a bit of reassurance about how that will be carried out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bring Scott in. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. There's several parts to this in respect of conditions, as you pointed out, condition 35 and 36. 36 sets out the trip cap in which the development shall operate shall operate. The trip cap is 734 and 782 two-way PCUs, which is equivalent to passenger car. It's the developer's transport consultants have provided us information how the development can actually be brought forward within that cap. The second element of that is set out in condition 35, which requires the information to be submitted, how we will collect that data and kind of the elements of that data and how it will be submitted to the council. So they work in combined with each other. And then I'll draw your attention to condition 26, because there's a requirement of a plot specific operational traffic management plan. And what that will do is basically set out the development proposals. Each reserve matter will have to submit that, so we'll know more details at reserve matter stage, and we'll be able to tie them to that operational traffic management. So those three conditions kind of all link in together and give a condition 23, is it? Yeah. Condition 23, a robust together, and they all have to be submitted ahead of any development, and then compliance with the trip cap as set out in condition 36. There's several examples of this we've used in the East Riding, similar, such as Brough South, Hessel Bridgehead, Yorkshire Energy Park, and the IEP site. And also across the country, specifically used on outline applications and DCOs, development consent orders. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, anybody else wish to speak on this application before the rest of the vote? If not, then this application is down for deferral, but then approval. Obviously, note all the additional bits that have been mentioned today in that long update. It's been proposed from Councillor Bibb and seconded by Councillor Healy. So if nobody else wishing to speak, we'll go to the vote. So all in favour of this application?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah.
So that application's approved for deferral and then approval. So thank you for everybody. If anybody wants to leave the auditorium on this application, then you can go, and then we'll move on to the next one. Thank you, members. So we're going on to page 108 now. This is the, again, Ermine Grange, Rawcliffe Road, Ermine again. Have we any updates from officers on this next one?
It's just a brief update, but I'll do a brief overview as well. So the application is proposed by Meta Tissue, who have identified the application site as a suitable site and location for their first tissue paper processing and production facility in the UK. Significant investment and employment opportunity both for the East Riding and the UK as a whole. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a tissue paper processing mill, which would have the capacity to produce 240,000 tonnes of tissue paper per annum. Water abstraction from the River Aire is required for the manufacturing processes, in which a pumping station is proposed on the riverbank, with underground abstraction and discharge pipework connecting to the main facility site. The application site forms the northern part of the Gull Freeport tax site. The site comprises relatively flat arable land and extends to approximately 85.72 hectares, or 88.94 when including the pipeline route. The development would have a gross external floor area of 278,373 square metres, with building heights ranging from 5.1 metres for the gatehouse up to 40 metres in height to provide for the high bay warehousing. The development is intended to be constructed in 4 phases after an initial enabling phase, allowing the initial operation of the facility with the remaining phases added as the facility becomes established. In terms of updates, we have got an update from Natural England. The summary of Natural England's advice states that further information in the form of clarity regarding the mitigation for potential loss of functionally linked land for the relevant qualifying bird features of the Humber Estuary is required in order to determine impacts on the designated sites. Once this clarity has been provided by the applicant's team, Natural England will then be consulted. As such, the recommendation of deferral would remain unchanged, awaiting further comments from Natural England. In terms of slight amendments, there's a couple of amendments needed to the report. There's been an issue with the formatting of the conditions. So as it stands, there's 2 condition number 7s and condition 18 contains 2 conditions. So it's just reformatting of the conditions that are needed, and then there'll be a total of 30 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, this is down for deferral and then approval with the additions laid out there. So we've got 2 speakers on this application. We've got Mr. G. Winter, the agent. Mr. Winter, if you'd like to come up, you've got 5 minutes with a 30-second when remaining. If you'd like to press your microphone and start when you're ready, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We fully endorse the officer assessment and recommendation to grant this commission. This reflects the positive steps the applicant has taken to work collaboratively with the officers and statutory consultees as part of a planning performance agreement to address any concerns raised during the application process. Added to this is the engagement with the local community that Metzer have arranging 3 consultation events to discuss the proposals at pre-application stage. We now wish to use this presentation to explain more about who Metzer are, focus on the importance of the scheme to Goole and the region, why this site is the right site, and what the benefits of the scheme are. Metzer Tissue are one of Europe's leading manufacturers in tissue paper products. Metzer have a sustainability ethos and are committed to safeguarding biodiversity, curbing climate change and biodiversity loss. This new state-of-the-art facility will deliver one of the largest paper mills in the UK and will have a level of production unrivaled in this country. This significant investment in Goole demonstrates a long-term commitment to the UK and the region. Metzer have chosen this Freeport site as their first paper mill in the UK, as it meets all their site requirements and criteria, including its location relative to their market need, proximity to the strategic road network, access to power, water and utilities. The availability of this large strategic site, also the tax incentives it brings, the ability for the site to accommodate the scale and bespoke configuration of buildings required, access to local labour and workforce. This was also cemented by the positive relationships formed with leaders of the council and the support provided by the Goole Invest team and the welcome to the region Metzer have received. The principle of employment development of this scale in this location is in accordance with local plan policies S3, S4 and EC1, as it supports the growth of an important employment cluster and is for a specific end user who will provide proven substantial economic and employment benefits and will bring an inward investment to the local area. These benefits include a range of 400 full-time jobs, ranging from warehouse operatives to skilled senior management roles, as well as 338 construction jobs, both for apprenticeship roles and trainees. It was also anticipated there would be 450 jobs created in the local supply chain. It would be a catalyst for the local investment, improving business and investor confidence, generating £21.7 million in gross value added during the construction process, a further £26.5 million once the project is complete, and £3.6 million in business rates. These business rates generated on the Freeport site will also be ring-fenced to be used by the council and spent in the local area. Metzer have designed a bespoke facility to meet their operational requirements and embedded mitigation in the facility. Early enabling works will establish a large earth bund around the site and tree planting to create an established landscape boundary around the site. This will create a standoff of residential areas and established in the first phase of development. In terms of highways, vehicle and pedestrian improvements will be made to Rawcliffe Road to create a safe access into the site, reducing the speed limit from 60 miles an hour to 40. Proportionate financial contributions will also be made towards improvements to the local and highway and strategic highway network, including existing bus services. Ecological mitigation is also provided on the site, which exceeds the mandatory 10% net gain. Dedicated areas on site will also provide a suitable habitat for wetland bird species currently using this arable land, and management of an agreed area off-site to make it suitable for these bird species. The development is also designed to be flood resilient, with measures proposed including raising the levels across the site. It is clear that the proposals have been rigorously tested through the EIA process, and heavily scrutinised by all consultees, and they now support the proposals with no objections, subject to agreed planning conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. In summary, when considering the proposal and the planning balance, substantial weight should be afforded to the economic benefits of the scheme when balanced against some limited high areas of harm. We therefore respectfully request you support the officer recommendation today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Winter, thank you for your time. If you'd like to take your seat. Our second speaker is Councillor Hanley again. Councillor Hanley, if you'd like to come up. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee, again. Obviously, I would like to propose that you do pass this application, and if you'll allow me to tell you why. On that photo that you are currently looking at, that's where I live. I live straight across the road from that site, and I have no objections. From day one of Metzer Tissue arriving in the East Riding, they have worked tirelessly with the local community. In this room today, there are another 2 ward councillors from that area that have also been present when Metzer Tissue have come to talk about what they would like to do and how they would like to do it. And more importantly, they have worked with the people, that few houses that are on that road as well. And with them, they would like to reduce 60 mile an hour down to 40 mile an hour. Little things that the local people have told them they want. Metzer Tissue have listened and have worked with us. And for that, I absolutely salute them. So the new tissue paper mill is one of the UK's largest foreign direct investment projects on a site of just 200 acres at Goole. Built over several phases, it's £400 million, and it will create 240,000 tonnes of tissue paper production capacity. That will increase the UK's self-sufficiency by more than 30% in the production of essential tissue products. This new manufacturing facility will create over 400 direct jobs, high quality, long-term employment opportunities in the local area. Moreover, during the construction phase and through the direct and indirect supply chain, the project is expected to support thousands more jobs and business growth, again, across the wider economy. It is estimated that it will generate over 50 million gross of GVA per annum. Metzer Tissue's project is deeply rooted in sustainability, with the raw materials originating from sustainable forests in Finland that are growing in volume by approximately 100 million cubic metres per year. The paper mill will be built with cutting-edge sustainable technologies and designed to operate with a world-class environmental performance, aiming for fossil fuel-free, sorry, that takes some saying, production by 2030. The company have proactively, as I alluded to earlier, engaged with the local community through all the public consultations, and they really have built the feedback into this final design process. This demonstrates their commitment to transparency, responsiveness, and community partnership. And by approving this application, the committee would enable significant economic regeneration, green industrial leadership, and a long-lasting local prosperity. Thank you for listening, committee.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Members, it's over to us. We'll start with Councillor Healy.
Yeah, well, I'm up for this. I think this is a really important opportunity, this Metzer Tissue planning application. It's more than just a development proposal, really. It's a strategic investment in the East Riding. This company is one of the world leaders in tissue paper type products, and I think this proposal, as the leader has said, will bring hundreds of jobs, and thousands and thousands of jobs actually, when not just in the plant itself but in the supply chain. And the investment, as we've heard, runs into, I think the figure was 400 million. I think that's one of the biggest manufacturing commitments that this region has ever seen, that East Riding has ever seen. But I also think it's more than just the jobs. I think that this investment will actually anchor Goole and the East Riding at the heart of the green economy, because this company is, as I understand it, committed to renewable energy, to responsible production methods. That means cleaner industry, lower emissions. We've heard as well from Councillor Handley about the fact that they've engaged with the local people, which are, and interesting about the speed limits and things, and that corporate social responsibility is so important. And also substantial benefits, I think, as well for training and skills, with opportunities for our young people, for apprenticeships, and for career progression. And of course, we heard about the construction phase of it, the logistics, the construction companies. I suppose in short, it delivers prosperity, it delivers sustainability, it will transform the economic landscape, along with the previous planning application that we've heard, in a really strategically important part of the East Riding, right on the edge of the region, gateway to the rest of the country. So I have no hesitation in proposing officers' recommendations. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have an awful lot to add. My biggest concerns were that where the raw materials were coming from, but Councillor Handley's answered that from Finland, because that's very important. Also, regarding the use of fossil fuel, and Councillor Handley also answers that. My only lingering concern is the loss of 35% of the good arable land, but that seems as though it's going to be offset by the company's plans for the future and their sustainable attitude. It's a very compact site for what they're actually producing. I think is a peach, and so consequently, all in all, I go ahead with this and second Councillor Handley for approval, delegate and approval.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak before we go to the vote? So this application is down for deferral with the additional information we've heard, and then obviously for approval at a slightly later date, same as the last application. So if we're all happy to move to the vote, hands up for all in favour.
3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
So that application is approved for deferral for approval down the line. Thank you, members. We'll have a 5-minute toilet break. We've done 2 applications now. Any members of the auditorium wishing to leave them, feel free, and then we'll move on. Thank you. Right, members, are we all ready to kick off again? Is everybody back? We'll just go live onto YouTube if you're all happy. So members, we're on to our final application with speakers. So this is the Flamborough Woodcock Road, page 219. Have we any officer updates, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a very couple of brief updates. There's a small typo on page 231, and it said the application should be refused if the legal agreement hasn't been agreed, but it should be the 15th of September, not the 5th of September. And it's, again, small update to condition 1 to reflect the updated conditions as put on by the planning inspector when they considered this scheme previously. I think just really for background, really very briefly for this one. Obviously, this is an application that's been to members a number of times over the, well, this site has anyway. This scheme seeks to amend the scheme that was agreed at appeal by the planning inspectorate, and essentially it only looks to amend the details of affordable housing. All other aspects of that application remain as agreed by the planning inspector. So all members are considering today is the issue of the removal of the planning committee, the requirement to provide the affordable housing on this site.
Thank you for that, James. So we've got we've got 4 speakers on this one. So first we'll kick off with Mr. M. Naylor, the objector. Mr. Naylor, if you'd like to come up. You've been here before with us, so you get 5 minutes with a 30-second reminder towards the end. So if you want to press your microphone, sir, and begin when you're ready.
You must be as sick as we are of the Woodcock Road housing development coming before you. This time, the company are pleading poverty as a reason for not delivering the affordable housing that they promised. The council's housing strategy and development department sums up in their response. It is disappointing there will now be no affordable housing coming forward in an area with little future development. The young people of Flamborough cannot get on the housing ladder and are having to move away from the village with their families. The village is becoming the preserve of older people and many holiday lets. So what's caused the financial problems? Your valuation and estates manager gives his view as some of the characteristics of this site. Its relatively isolated location, above average size and details of the dwellings will tend to have made it more vulnerable to economic headwinds. The apparent difficulties of the previous developer have no doubt compounded the viability pressures. The financiers are seeking to distance themselves from the management of the previous developer. What they fail to tell you is that they shared the same address as that company, according to Companies House. They appointed a developer who had experience of house building but not developing a large housing estate. There were so many poor decisions that led to the current situation, but I'll just concentrate on one. The planning permission that they took on was for an estate with 2, 3 and 4 and a few 4-bedroom houses. This fitted exactly the profile of the housing requirements within Flamborough as identified by the council. One of their first actions was to submit a planning application to increase the number of 4-bedroom houses and add many 5-bedroom houses. So the financiers appointed a developer without necessary experience and agreed to drastically change the housing mix. Your valuations and estates manager identifies both these factors as fundamental to the current financial difficulties. As I read the documentation, they are still expecting a 20% return on their investment for this period. The profit on return in order to attract investment is more usually 17.5%. The developer justifies this increase to reflect the inherent risks associated with the site concerning low sales, volumes and planning issues. In other words, they have to offer a greater profit to investors because of the past mismanagement and reputational damage as a result. So what can you do? No doubt the officers, as they always do, will tell you to go against their recommendation. Not to go against their recommendation, as the developer will appeal as they have in the past. They would probably win unless you have highlighted an alternative course of action for your officer to take. You have the experience in planning, but could we, as an association, suggest altering the criteria for when the affordable housing has to be constructed? This would then give breathing space for the developer. More fundamental change, however, is probably needed to make the development viable. This could mean changing the type of housing for phases 2 and 3 to smaller houses, which will be less difficult to sell. Yes, yet another planning application. There may be other strategies that you can suggest. Just passing this application will not solve the problem. If the figures are to be believed, it will still not be viable. What will they be asking for next? Will they be saying that they cannot afford to build the playground or do the landscaping, or will we be left with a partly finished development? Please think outside the box, committee, to find a solution that returns affordable housing that better meets the needs of Flamborough Village and its young people. I have to say that from the outset, the planning department was warned about this developer and
30 seconds remaining.
And ignored us. Please refuse this application. Thank you.
Mr. Naylor, thank you for your time. Our second speaker is the agent, Mr. N. Green. Mr. Green, if you'd like to come up, you also have 5 minutes and you'll be given a 30-second warning towards the end. Press your microphone and begin when you're ready, sir. Thank you.
Afternoon all. My name's Nathan Green, Development Manager for Yorkshire Coast Living, the new developer on the site. If I may just respond to one point, the funder had a legal charge on the original developer, hence the same address. And the original developer wasn't appointed, there was a loan. We're obviously aware of the history of the site, but simply put, after the original developer failed around June 2024, the funder had to decide if and how to progress the scheme. A decision was made to step into the scheme, which is why there was the loan and the charge, and a thorough review of what was inherited was undertaken. As came to light over that period, there were issues to resolve, many of which I've noted have been mentioned in previous committee meetings. However, to move forward with a successful build, a local main contractor was appointed, local supply chain engaged, and communications with local residents was initiated. With the new team and the new supply chain, we're now well on the way to resolving the site level issues. And clarity has been made on the site in planning terms following the appeal determined earlier this year. But the issue for consideration today is that the scheme is unviable in what is recognised as a very challenging market, and a very different market to 2021 when the original Section 106 agreement was executed. In terms of the viability report commissioned and submitted as part of this application, it does confirm the scheme is not viable, even when the planning contributions have been omitted. So the deficit in our report is north of 2 million. The deficit in the council's report is north of 400,000. That's a loss. So, as I say, the position has been verified by the council's own valuation report. They've run their own independent scenarios using independent data, not our data. And the council report concludes the scheme falls some way short of meeting accepted financial viability benchmarks without affordable housing, and has little capacity to offer planning contributions. So the emphasis there being on, even without these additional contributions, the scheme is falling short of the viability benchmarks. Obviously, with the contributions, the position is worse still. So as both the Aspinall Verde report, which is our report, and the council's independent assessments demonstrate, the scheme is unviable, and indeed the deficit levels, which I've just said, the scheme was never viable using 2021 figures. And an informed developer wouldn't and couldn't have agreed to those policy levels imposed on this site. and that's hence the variation submitted. So looking ahead, the developer's intention is to deliver a scheme the local area can be proud of, but we do need and would kindly request the committee's support in order to deliver this. Accordingly, we believe the officer's recommendation should be followed and this variation be approved. Thank you for your time.
Mr Green, thank you for your time. Our third speaker is Councillor Phoenix. Councillor Phoenix, if you'd like to come up, you again have got 5 minutes with a 30-second warning towards the end. If you want to press play on your microphone and begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, here we are again. I've lost count of the number of times I have sat before this committee to speak on behalf of the people of Flamborough, who are quite rightly sick and tired of the catastrophic way that this development has been managed from the start. I have been involved for well over 3 years, and the associated problems began way before that. But we are now here today to discuss the points at 6.12, 6.14 and 6.15. So first, I ask you to refer to those points. At 6.12, the previous permission was subject to an S106 legal agreement. I highlight the word legal, which secured, and again, I highlight the word secured, the delivery of affordable housing units. The irony. It then goes on to say, this agreement is required to be updated in order to delete reference to affordable housing delivery, and that will be secured through a deed of variation. We then go to 6.14, where we are told that the valuation and estates team have been reconsulted, and they say in brief, quote, the complex history on the site and the financial implications are cited with additional reference to the isolated location. To some people in Beverley at County Hall, they may well think that Flamborough is isolated, but just 4 miles drive around the coast from the biggest town in Bidlington in East Riding. And this development being in the centre of the village of Flamborough is hardly what you would describe as isolated. So we then go to 6.15, and I quote, the extant requirement for affordable housing delivery and contributions would have, quote, increased the likelihood of rendering the remainder of the development unviable. And we have just heard from the representative there. But enough about the needs and wants of the developer and what the valuation and estates team think, because I sit here before you today as a representative of the people of Flamborough, who, as I've said, are sick and tired of this whole sorry affair. Flamborians born and bred in Flamborough cannot get on the housing ladder. Currently, the cheapest house on the market on this development is £260,000, out of reach for many. And this so-called deed of variation, in other words, I would call it a get-out clause, will ensure that locals trying to buy in Flamborough will be out of reach for them. If this developer couldn't afford to build affordable housing, why did they take on that project? They knew all about the history of it, and we could all see what a state the previous contractor had left the site in. I'm sure many of you have visited the site yourselves. My heart does not go out to this developer, and I take you back to the quote at 6.15 by the estates and management team about the increased likelihood of rendering the delivery of the remainder of the development unviable. They took the risk. They are responsible. Why should the people of Flamborough be the ones suffering because of it? Every business has small gains and large gains. Can you imagine Tesco not selling milk to the public because they don't make a profit? If a 4-pint carton of milk sells for £1.45, the profit margin would be about 1.5 pence. The real profit is balanced out with other items. So let's not feel sorry for this company because they have failed to
30
balance
seconds
their
remaining.
books. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phoenix. Our final speaker on this is Councillor Norman, and I think he's on Zoom or Teams, wherever we are. Councillor Norman, can you hear us?
I can, Chair. Thank you.
Fantastic. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. You can see how important this application is to the area, given the number of speakers. Mr. Naylor spoke very well and said everything needed for yourselves to make the decision, the correct decision. However, as you know, the crux of the application is the removal of the affordable homes on this much debated and amended project. The project has seen numerous applications causing delays and enforcements, with further applications following on. All of these amendments, which have been caused in no small part by the developers, have increased the cost of the development, as well as extending the timescale for it. The developer is now claiming that they can't afford to complete the project as originally planned and signed up to contractually. Valuation and Estates team clearly state that their judgment is, and I quote, on balance. And therefore, although their on balance view is that the developer should be allowed to get away without the addition of affordable homes, it is this committee who have the right to take their call from their own on balance view. I would ask that this committee's view should be that some contribution needs to be allocated towards affordable homes. Additionally, of course, the residents of Flamborough deserve to have the opportunity to stay in their town and have a number of affordable homes available. Flamborough is a beautiful village and is being overrun by the need of tourism, static caravans, and of course holiday homes, which undoubtedly push up the price of the first-time buyers' homes. The residents need to be able to stay close to home and the affordable homes that will allow it. So, Committee and Chair, please take the unbalanced view and refuse this application. Many thanks for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Members, it's over to us. We'll start with Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add to any of this. I think we should reject this, and so I will propose that we reject this application. We refuse it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Robson. Councillor Heslop-Mullins.
Thank you, Chairman. Like many here, I have watched the metamorphosis of this application for this development, but unlike a caterpillar, it has never turned into a beautiful butterfly. We have always had some problems. The one redeeming feature of this was affordable homes in Flamborough. Having said that, I also find it unusual that a competent business should take on a development in 2024 without actually looking at the possible outcomes. And if they looked at the possible outcomes, would they have gone forward? They did go forward. They took on the contract as stated. They took on the development as stated. Therefore, I would like to second the rejection of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Corliss.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be really brief. We started out with something that was a reasonable fit for the needs of a community. We've then ended up with something that didn't fit the needs of the community at all. And the one shred that was left that was a saving grace was the fact that it had affordable houses. Now the applicant's asking to take these away. I find it frankly ridiculous, regardless of, examination of viability exercises. which after all, if a developer produces a viability exercise, estates, valuation in estates can only look at that exercise and raise questions or doubts about it. My idea of this, it's the wrong exercise. Start with a profit target. If businesses do this, that's what businesses do. They start with a profit target and then they fit the income and outgoings around that to try to achieve it. This is the wrong way round. This is saying this is what we want to construct. And they've increased that substantially in 4 and 5 beds, and then say, oh, well, what a shame, the profit that we had as our target isn't there anymore. Let's not have affordable housing. It's just the wrong way round. Refusal for me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. I think, first of all, affordable housing, you know, it's not an optional extra. It's a central part of our local plan and of the national policy in the NPPF. And that's clear, you know, developments must deliver mixed and balanced communities. And if you strip out the affordable element, you conflict with policies. So I believe there is a good planning reason to refuse this. And of course, it's been proposed refusal, but we will be pressed quite rightly on what those reasons are. But I believe stripping out affordable housing, contrary to policy, provides such a reason. Also, I think, you know, these viability arguments, that they should be scrutinised very carefully. Now, this developer, I realise they're not the original developer, but they entered into this scheme knowing the policy requirements. And the principle of affordable housing was fundamental to the original granting of planning permission. And I don't think it can be just set aside now because the developer wishes to improve margins, whatever those margins are. And I think, you know, that would just set a damaging precedent. And the local need in Flamborough has been discussed. You know, housing waiting lists are long, prices continue to outstrip wages. We've heard about the cheapest property at 268,000 or whatever it was in Flamborough. And I think if we approve a scheme with no affordable housing, we fail the very residents we're here to represent. So I think that on balance, you know, the social harm of losing affordable homes outweighs any benefit. And so for these reasons, I think conflict with national policy, fail to meeting identified housing need, unacceptable harm to the balance in the community. I would also support the motion to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bibb.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions on this, really. If we were minded to refuse today, would that actually lead to the affordable houses being built, or would the scheme simply become unviable and nothing would get done? Also, the applicant has said that they will be struggling to make a profit without the affordable housing, but the objectors said that they're looking at making a 20% profit. So I wonder if officers could confirm, please.
Yeah, I'll bring James in a second, Chair, but just on the point of principle, this isn't a particularly subjective decision. It's based upon the facts of the case and the assessment that's been provided in terms of whether or not a site is viable. This isn't an assessment of just a developer. You know, the assessment has been scrutinised by our own internal team who have used their own evidence. We haven't even used the evidence provided by the developer. We have used our own evidence and identified that the site isn't viable. We have clearly recently been through a public inquiry on a similar site in Hornsey, where members argued against affordable housing, and we did not win that appeal, and it cost us a lot of money at the end of the day. So we have to take away the history of this site. We're all completely frustrated about the amount of resource that we as a council have spent dealing with this site, both from a planning and a planning enforcement perspective. It's been far from ideal, but every application that we have refused that has gone to an appeal, we have lost. We have had cost awards against us on this site as well. So we have to be really, really mindful of that. So if members do want to go down a reason for refusal, you need to provide today the technical evidence as to why the viability assessment provided by the developer is incorrect and why you disagree with the council's viability officer as well. So if it might help, James, we can just explain why we believe the site isn't viable and answer two questions that council have raised as well.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, in terms of the viability, as Stephen was saying, it's been looked at very, very carefully by our own independent estates and valuation officer. So in terms of the key issues here were the essentially build cost inflation, which has gone up significantly, and also that, which has been a very key issue here, increase in finance costs, and those two together have really affected the costing on this development. The other issue is that's been picked up on it is essentially it's those high costs in relation to the relative value, and those high costs have also been put forward in terms of effectively the quality of the build, the detailing which has been provided into these houses is a much higher level than you would normally get, and that's increased the cost on that in relation to into a value into an area where they're not achieving those returns. So that's essentially the three main reasons. It's the detailing of the development, the increased finance costs, and it increased in build inflation that our own officers have looked at, and that's been the key and the key and important decisions in why they've reached that recommendation.
Thanks for that, James. We'll have Councillor White, then Councillor Robson.
Yeah, sorry. So my question is, what is their profit margin then that you've decided makes it either viable or unviable? So are we saying like their profit margin is 15%, so that makes it unviable, whereas if at 18% it is, and therefore what is it, please?
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of what's been proposed, when we hear the applicant speaking in terms of the actual scheme, it's very close to not making any money at all. It actually makes a loss in terms of that level. In terms of the profit margin, this is something that's looked at very, very carefully at that application we had at Rollston. And we looked at the potential, when we rehearsed this issue on profit, members were very unhappy at that time with that because I think the profit margin has been put forward at 20%. 20% is considered to be the normal assessment. And on that application, we got specialist external advice as well to advise us on that. And the surveyors in relation to that effectively instruct us that that was actually the market rate that was accepted. And that's what all charter surveyors would be looking at. So in terms of that profit margin, that is what's been established. And that is what an inspector would look at. And that is what's been, and that's the area that we can defend on that basis.
Let's bring Stephen back.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Bibb's first question, so I appreciate we didn't actually answer that, but I think you asked what would happen if this was refused. Chances are the developer will just walk away, and refusing this application is not likely to lead to the delivery of affordable housing on site, unless there's a completely new application by a completely new developer comes in, which I think is highly unlikely. So I think what will happen is that the site will just be left as it currently is. The developer will walk away and we'll end up with a quarter half-built site. So that's a really important material consideration as well. And I think, bearing in mind the issues that we've had on this site and all the issues that the residents have raised, that is probably a worst case scenario for the residents and ourselves.
We've got Councillor Robson and then Councillor Whittle.
Thank you, Chair. As councillors, we represent our residents, and we're not concerned about the ins and outs of the financial situations of developers or what the officers consider to be reasonable and unreasonable profit margins. This is none of our business. We're here to represent our residents, and our residents are very unhappy that something that they were promised was going to enhance their community is now being taken away from them. So my position on this changes not at all. If you can't afford to build the houses, then don't build them. Simple as that, so far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Councillor. Unfortunately, I've got to disagree with you, because if this goes to appeal, it will affect this council hugely with the costs that we'll have to pay out again on this site. If those proposal and seconders are not going to be withdrawn, I will come back in and counteract that. We'll go to Councillor Whittle next.
Thank you, Chairman. As Hornsey was raised by our officers up there, I'll grasp that particular nettle. But first of all, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. we've been dealing with this area for so long now that it's engraved upon my memory. I go to bed at night and I dream about Woodcock, and then I wake up in the morning screaming. And I have to take issue with Mr. Chatfield. I'm sorry, but he refers to the detailing on the development. I mean, when I saw the development, it was absolutely dreadful. We had wobbly ridge tiles, we had strange window frames, we had all sorts of things wrong with that. So don't mention detailing to me. But coming back to Hornsey, and there is a direct parallel here, I would suggest. We refused the Keep Moat development, which is currently causing great concern within our town. We refused it on the grounds of affordable housing, but also we refused it on the grounds that it was a transitional site. It was a transitional site that really went forward to the inquiry. We objected to the fact that we were thinking that we were going for 15% or 18%. Actually, that's not really our business. The business is that our officers do make very, very strenuous attempts to attain an equitable solution for both us as ward councillors and for our residents, and also for the developers, because one thing which Mr. Hunter said today, which really resonated with me, was the developer could just walk away. Now, it could be regarded as being blackmail if the developer had said it, but no, our director of planning has said it. The developer could walk away, and then you would be left with the unfortunate situation of having a half-developed site, various houses falling into dilapidation, and the whole thing would collapse. My question, however, and how I vote, I don't think is going to be affected by the result of the question, but my question is, again, going back to the Keep Moat development in Hornsey, miraculously, despite the fact that we said that we wouldn't accept it without affordable housing, and despite the fact they said they couldn't afford to do affordable housing, now that they seem to be having affordable housing on the site in a multitudinous form, by some of the means, I believe, by going into cooperation with another organisation. Perhaps our revered team up there could enlighten us on that, and perhaps indicate if that is a way forward for any subsequent developer who is having difficulty providing the affordable homes which the area so clearly cries out for. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, I can come in there, Chair, if that's okay.
Yep,
that's in relation to that, that does happen on a number of sites. Essentially, those affordable houses are delivered outside the planning regime. So effectively, that would be usually be from some sort of funding mechanism through Homes England or some other government agency that actually allows them to access those funds to provide the affordable housing. But essentially, it means it can be delivered outside planning. So it wouldn't actually affect the viability and can come forward. It's essentially a way to ensure we get it's additionality on affordable housing provided on sites. But again, it's something which members can't insist on because it's nothing that we can achieve through the planning system itself. It's something which is achieved outside that.
Well, thank you, James. Did you want to come in on that, Stephen?
I was just asking James, Chair, if the developer is actually speaking to Homes England in terms of trying to seek additional grant funding to provide affordable housing through that mechanism, and I don't know the answer. I mean, it's certainly something that we can raise with a developer, but I don't know the answer offhand.
Thank you, Chairman. In the circumstances, I found myself in the unenviable state of probably disagreeing with the entire rest of the committee, because I'm not going to support refusal. I'm going to support the officers on this. And the reason for that is quite simple. We have it in black and white before us, assuming our computers are working properly. We have it in black and white before us why we should accept the nasty little situation of not providing affordable housing. But if we did refuse, it is my firm belief that we would be taken to appeal, and I would also think that we'd be taken to the cleaners once again. I have never, Chairman, never in my life on planning bowed down to the view that, oh, I can't do that because of the appeal. I've always regarded the threat of appeals as being something to be dismissed because I'm a planning member. However, on this occasion, it stacks up against it for me, and so therefore I cannot support refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
thanks, Councillor Whittle. So I'm going to second that from Councillor Whittle.
That's a negative, direct negative, so we've got to deal with the refusal first.
Do we not hear them all first and then we go with their vote? That's what we normally do.
Yeah, we've got a refusal on the table, so we can't do a direct negative.
We just have.
No, he didn't actually
He
propose.
did.
With
Refusal.
your apologies, with my apologies, Chair, I did not make any proposal.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah,
It is
no,
to straighten it out,
yeah.
and then we can come back maybe.
No, that's fine. Sorry, Dean. I thought, yeah, no, that's fine. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Ever being the one for the short, concise response, when Councillor Rogers said that we could take a caning on this financially, the council, then my answer to that is, well, that is the cost of democracy. We are here to stand up for our residents. You do your job, we'll do our job. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. So I'm going to go for the approval of this application for the following reasons. One, the cost of this council. We've already had huge costs awarded against this council for the appeals that we've already heard on this site. We've obviously heard from our Director of Planning in terms of the risks of leaving that site unfinished, which it would be a disaster for Flamborough and the residents up there. I'm not prepared to go against our estates and valuation team. You know, they have used independent figures and not the developers' figures to come to that conclusion. I'm also concerned of the amount of time that this site has taken up from committees, from Eastern Area to this committee, to all our officers' time, and all that compacted over the last few years all stacks up to what I believe is an unacceptable cost to the ratepayer. Now, on the other side of that, I do feel extremely sorry for the residents of Flamborough, especially Mr. Naylor, who's been here with us throughout this. And I think I'm right in saying you've spoke with us before at this committee, if my memory serves us right, and he's got himself here again today and spoken. And, you know, I do feel very, very sorry for the residents of Flamborough. But listening to what our estates and evaluation team have said and the risk of having huge costs again to this council, it is not something that I'm prepared to risk. And so for that reason, I'm going to propose approval of this application, which is something that I don't normally do from the chair, but just to move things on. Councillor McMaster.
Thank you, Chair. I concur and happy to second.
What we'll do is we'll go with the vote, the first one that we heard, which was to refuse the application, which was proposed by Councillor Heslop Mullins, seconded, Councillor Robson proposed and seconded by Councillor Heslop Mullins to refuse what's in front of us today. We'll vote on that, but we need the reasons. Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah,
I was just going to give you some planning reasons for refusal, just in case, you know, because I'm sure that officers would expect that. But my understanding is that removal of affordable housing provision conflicts with local plan policy H2, which requires 25% of dwellings on qualifying sites to be affordable, and with paragraph 62 to 65 of the NPPF, which I think is 10% it talks about. And the proposal would fail to deliver the mixed balance community. So that's just, you know, I offer that as potential reasons for refusal, because one thing that I've learned on planning is that you never refuse or suggest refusal unless you can back it up with a proposal. That's one thing I've learned. So if that's helpful, I offer it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, is that enough?
Yeah, the difficulty we have is that the planning policy requires, as Councillor Healy quite rightly says, affordable housing, but that then is caveated by subject to viability. So the policy actually allows a developer not to provide affordable housing if it's proven not to be viable. So that is clearly what the developer has done, in our opinion, in this case. So what is before you is, in our view, a policy compliant scheme, because the policy allows for no affordable housing if there's evidence to show why. So it comes back to, I think, where we were with Hornsey, is that members need to provide a critique of the evidence that's been provided by the developer to say why they feel that those figures are incorrect and why the site isn't viable for affordable housing.
But we haven't seen the critique, have we? I mean, we haven't seen the developer's viability statement. We had it referred to in the report, but we haven't had the same information as the estates and valuations officers have had to make their decision on. So it doesn't seem like a level playing field.
No, the document's obviously online as part of the planning file, and the issues are summarised in the officer's report. But I agree, it's a huge document, 70, 80 pages, that is summarised in a couple of paragraphs in the officer's report. But yeah, I mean, if we go to an appeal, we have to say why we believe it's not viable. So that's what we need from members today. We need your advice as to why the site isn't viable that we can then use before an inspector.
So we're saying that we haven't enough reason at the minute to proceed on that vote. Councillor Robson.
You've put us in a very, very difficult position. We're in a position where we have to approve, the mismanagement of this site. It is totally ridiculous. It's like a mother spending all the family money on luxuries and then saying that she can't afford to buy her kids shoes. As Councillor Corliss said, this is the wrong way round. The assessment should have been done at the beginning and not at the end. I stick with what I've said, and I stick with refusal of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Councillor Corliss.
Just a real quickie. I understand the dilemma, but you know, we're in a position where the developer wanted a certain profit. They've designed certain homes and now have designed a number of homes that the community doesn't need and didn't ask for to replace the ones that they had in their original plan that the community did need and ask for. And the first thing that they have turned to is a reapplication to this council to remove the affordable housing. That is very, very hard for us, and they're well aware of that. They won an appeal, they've had costs. We'll go back with an application to take out the affordable housing. We won't explore any sensible alternative like saying, let's look at what we're actually building here and change it. We could put in affordable housing, we could do a number of other things to reduce the costs, but we're stuck with this tactic that the first thing we'll do is try and get the easy way out, as I see it. Let's try the council with the affordable housing first. And it's not fair, but we're in a horrible, horrible position. We're stuck with it. In my view, I can't envisage a planning way out. So it's very, very difficult.
Members, there is one other option. If the proposer and seconder was withdrawn, I will propose that we defer and go back to the developer for further discussions. If we're in a stalemate, we can't move. Well, you're shaking your head, Councillor Robson, so come up with some planning reasons then, because we can't take the vote without.
The planning reasons, and they haven't met their obligations. Councillor Healy quite clearly pointed out the planning reasons.
Right, I will, James just said that I can actually move that as an amendment now, so I will move that we defer and go back to the developer if there's a seconder for that, and then we can take that vote.
Can I just say,
Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I think there's merit in that. I think that I take Mr. Hunt's point that the document is on the planning portal. It's been quoted in the officer's report, but I think a deferral would give us an opportunity to see what the estates and valuation officer said, and we can really sort of try and get under the nub of that. So, yeah.
Are you happy to second that deferral then, Councillor?
Can I just?
Are you happy to second?
Do you want to?
Have we, is there anybody willing to second so Councillor McMaster's willing to second my vote for deferral. So shall we go to the vote if there's nobody else wishing to speak? I've thrown the boomerang, so this will be coming back to committee. Again. Councillor Robson.
If it does come back to committee, I'll be speaking from the floor, no doubt. I'm not willing to change my stance on this. What I suggest we do is we go for a vote to refuse, and if that vote to refuse gets overturned, then we go back to yours.
I think it's this one first. Jane's just confirmed. You know, I thought it was as you thought it had to be that, but because it's for a deferral, that vote's taken first.
Yeah, Councillor Rogers has moved an amendment, so we always take the amendment.
The amendment first.
And then if the amendment is carried, that then becomes a substantive motion and we vote on it again. If
Right,
obviously-
okay, then
If
so
it
the,
fails, then we'd come to yours.
okay.
Does that make sense? Councillor Lock-Mullins.
Yeah, I'm happy to go for a deferral on the basis that you were talking, that we will talk to the developer about coming up with a better idea and give us opportunity to see what's been done.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I'm putting forward that we vote on a deferral, give officers chance to go back to the developer for further discussions, give us a chance to, for the members that need to read the stuff from the Estates and Valuation team to understand that. Councillor McMaster seconded that, so we're going to vote on that first. So we're going to vote for that. So all in favour of that option?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Any against? 2
1,
against.
2.
And any abstentions? So that's carried that part of it. We have to vote on it again as a substantial motion. Added. So we'll just vote on that again as a substantial motion. So again, I won't repeat, but for deferral. So all in favour of deferral?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Any against? 1 against. Any abstentions? That's everybody, I think. So that application's deferred to go back to the developer and it will come back again. Thank you, members. So we'll move swiftly on to the final application, which is at the top of the agenda, item 5, and this is the R100 Energy Limited at Spaldington. Have we any officer updates on this one?
No, Chair.
We've got no speakers, so members, it's over to us on this one. Anybody wish to come in on this one? Anybody? Councillor Whittle.
Thank you, Chairman. Seeing as how nobody else wanted to. Spaldington has been another thorn in my side for many years. I've always enjoyed discussions regarding composting, wind farms and latterly anaerobic digesters. But it strikes me that this particular application is intrinsic to the operation of the anaerobic digester. It will be constrained by the Environment Agency. I think it's a straightforward one because, again, with no reference whatsoever to appeals and such like, I think we would only hide it to nothing if we were to refuse it. So therefore, I'm going to move approval, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittle. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Contrary to what we don't seem to be getting on too well today. Contrary to what Councillor Whittle said, it rather than being intrinsic to the operation, it's actually ancillary to the operation because of the fact that the digester can work perfectly well without these other gases. The other gases are added to enhance the biogas that's coming out. So it makes them more useful in the fact that they can use them for transport and stuff like that. But it makes them less environmentally friendly and also a risk of explosions and things like that. So I don't know where I'm standing on this one yet. I'll listen to what other people say.
Thank you, Councillor Lock-Mullins.
Contrary to what my colleague has just said, I would like to support the proposal of Councillor Whittle. So I seconded, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ely.
Well, it's interesting, this conflict between ancillary and intrinsic. So I'd just like to ask the officers, I mean, why was this plant not proposed with this in the first place? And why have they had to come back to add this? Why was it not added in the first place, and should it have been?
If I can come to
Is it because it would have been less likely to have been passed in the first place?
No, it's essentially it's the hazardous substance of consent sits alongside planning, so it's not an either or. So essentially, what this is for it's an authorised AD plant. Liquefied natural gas tanks have been approved under planning, but they need also consent through the hazardous substances of consent to actually store those substances on site. So in this effect, this is a kind of a sister application to the one that's already been approved on the site, and it's just essentially it's a very weird part of the planning legislation is hazardous substances, because we have to get consent from the Coma Competent Authority, which is the HSE and the Environment Agency. We then have to consider whether that use would be appropriate on this site. It is an authorised AD plant with these facilities have been provided on site. In terms of the highway movements, we're looking at one movement every 2 to 3 weeks has been set out. In terms of one lorry delivery, it's a very small scale development. But because it trips over the threshold, it does require specific hazardous substances consent under it. So it's basically it sits alongside it. It doesn't. So it wasn't a case that they forgot about it earlier. It was the fact that that application was in, and they also have to apply to the HSE to also get to us to say, and we have to agree it with the HSE. And the reason why it's taken a bit of time to get to committee is because it's taken some time to get it through the HSE, who've been looking at it very, very carefully. Essentially, because that's their remit as the Coma Competent Authority.
Could you just follow that? Because normally when applications need another application, like I'm thinking of listed building consent, for example, you might have an application and then another application for the same application alongside it. Is that different here? Because if they needed hazardous substance consent in the first place when they applied for planning permission, would it not have been more appropriate to submit both applications at the same time? I don't know. So it does say in here when the first one was submitted, but I just wondered why they weren't submitted simultaneously.
That's not a question I don't know the answer to be fair. That they may have done, they may have prepared the casework, the groundwork to that. It's quite an old application. It's a 23 application. Essentially, so it's taken a bit of time for them to do that. I generally don't know the timescales as to why there's no requirement to do it to begin with. Quite a lot of times we'd have to get planning permission first, and the hazardous substances consent would follow on from that, which in some respects would probably be a more sensible view, because in some respects it'd be sort of wasted effort if you're going to hazardous substances consent for something that isn't going to be granted planning permission, for example.
Members, if there's no one else wishing to speak, we've had a proposal from Councillor Whittle for approval, seconded by Councillor Heslop Mullins. We'll go to the vote if there's nobody else wishing to speak. All in favour? That's everyone. That application is approved. Thank you, members. Have we any future applications on item number 9, which is page 237? The bit I always forget at the end. You see there's 2 on the front page, and I think there's some on the back. There is. So just take note of those, please, members. Anybody wishing any site visits or anything like that, then speak now or forever hold your peace. Are we all happy with those at this moment in time till we debate? Yep. So if everyone's happy, no one wishes to make any further comments, we'll close today's meeting. Thank everybody we've kept it under the 2 hours, which is helpful. Everybody, we'll end there. Thanks, everybody.